Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. This shot doesn't look very good, and there's a couple reasons for that. The lighting on my face is kind of strange, the colors just don't look very good, the window behind me is super overexposed, and I had to turn up the ISO on my camera really high to be able to expose this shot correctly. So let's fix this with some lighting. To fix this, I'm going to set up my C-stand with this Godox light. Then I'm going to add a softbox to it to diffuse the light a little bit. And I'm also going to turn on some ambient lights in the room that add a little bit of a warm glow. Finally, I'll adjust the ISO on my camera, and this looks so much better than before. You can tell that the colors of the shot are so much nicer, it's not as grainy anymore, and the lighting on my face is a lot better than before. This video isn't about lighting for YouTube videos, but I do think this demonstrates really nicely just how important that lighting is when it comes to photography and video. In this video, I'm going to cover all the basics of how you can shoot photography with artificial lighting. Adding light to a photo isn't for every style of photography, but I think if you've never experimented with it, it does open a lot of doors creatively. Whether you're shooting in the studio or you're shooting outside in a combination of natural and artificial light, it's just so much fun to experiment with, and there's so much you can do in terms of changing the look of your image to be exactly what you want. Let's start with some basics. The light you saw me use earlier was a Godox SL60, and it's a continuous light, which is normally used for videos and movies. A strobe light like this battery-powered newer Vision 4 is considered more suitable for photography because it only emits a burst of light during the time that your photo is being taken. This means that the light can be much more powerful even though it's the same size as the continuous light, simply because it doesn't always need to be on. It only has to be on during the split second that your photo is being taken. This also brings on its own set of challenges because, especially if you're shooting on film, you can't see the light in real time. Strobe lighting can be really intimidating, so to show you how I work with one, I met up with my friend Montell, who's a really talented music artist, and we went out to take some portraits of him at dusk with the strobe. Before we get to that shoot though, let's get into some basics like how to connect a strobe to your camera and how to meter for one. Connecting the strobe is really simple. My strobe came with this wireless connector, and it works with any camera that I've tried with so far. I've tried both digital, film, and it's worked with everything. Metering is where things get a little bit more interesting. If you want, you can use a Sekonic handheld meter and just use the strobe mode on there to meter your flash. But in a situation like I'll show you in a second where I'm mixing strobe with natural light, this doesn't work very well because it's really difficult to meter both the natural light and the strobe at the same time and know what that balance of light is going to look like. In the past with film, what people would do was they would use a Polaroid back for the camera, which essentially just shoots the exact same image, but instead of on your medium format or 35mm film, it would just get printed on a piece of Polaroid, and you could see what that light looked like. But unfortunately, more recently, as many of you know, Polaroid film, and specifically FP100C, have gotten a lot more expensive, which is really unfortunate. And as much as I'd like to use FP100C every time I'm shooting with a flash, that's just not reasonable. So to meter, I've just been using a digital camera. That might seem a little bit counterintuitive, and I'm sure many people will not like that. But when I'm doing a shoot, like with my friend Montell, I just want the best images possible. I want them as predictable as possible, and if using Polaroid film is not an option, then I think using a digital camera is the next best thing. So when I'm shooting, I just set up my little Sony a6600, connect the wireless connector to the top, and then dial in my settings on there until I find that it looks good. And then I transfer those settings to my film camera. So like I said, that might be a little bit controversial, but for me, it's just the best way, the easiest way, and the most reliable way to get consistent results. So let me show you some real examples, and I think all of this will make a lot more sense. So here we are at this beautiful location at a beautiful dusk, blue hour time of day to shoot photos of my friend Montell. I set up my light, and the first thing I do is start taking test shots with my digital camera. Once it looks good on my digital camera, I transfer those settings over and start shooting on 35mm film.
I liked your hands going through your hair.
Yes?
Yeah. 1 sec, 3, 2.
I'm shooting with my flash at a quarter power here, and as the light starts to get lower and lower, I continue to check with my digital camera to make sure that my settings are still good and that the photo isn't going to be underexposed as the light gets lower. What I like about this setup is that it's some of the cheapest gear you can buy. This is one of the cheapest lights that I could find on Amazon, and the umbrella modifier literally costs $5. It can be pretty deceiving sometimes that you feel like you need the best quality light with the best output rating, and that's just not the case. It's so much more about how you use the light, how you modify it, and what's in front of the camera. Yeah, rub your hands through there again. Just one hand. I think it's amazing how much detail and contrast that this light adds to 35mm film. If I didn't know this was 35mm, I probably would have guessed it was maybe digital or medium format. Thank you to Montell for being in these photos, and thank you to Noah, who you see in the background helping out. He was a huge help on this shoot, and definitely when you're working with gear like lights, it's definitely super nice to have somebody there helping out as well. There we go.
We done?
Yeah. Now that we've seen some photos, let's get into some of the real technical nitty-gritty stuff that comes with shooting a flash. And the first thing that's really important to know is the flash sync speed on your camera. This is going to be different for different cameras depending on what type of shutter the camera has. So my Mamiya 7 has a leaf shutter, which means that it can sync to the flash at any shutter speed. If you're using a more traditional curtain style shutter camera like this Contax that I was using on my shoot with Montell, the shutter sync speed is typically not the highest shutter speed that your camera can go to. It actually is usually indicated on the camera in an orange marking. So in this case, it's 1/250th of a second. Finally, this is one thing I didn't really get into in my shoot because I was using a very simple umbrella modifier. But the actual modifier that you mount onto the light also has a really big impact on the final look of your image. And this is one of the main ways that you can control the look of the strobe. So you could use the umbrella just like I did. You could get a fancier softbox, which just contains and focuses the light a little bit better than an umbrella. Or you could get really crazy with it if you want and use something like this spotlight mount, which really lets you get super creative with the shapes of the light. In the next couple days or the next week, I'll have another video where I'm actually shooting a whole campaign with this strobe light, which should be really exciting. It's for my bag company, Long Weekend, that I'm launching together with my girlfriend. We've been working on this project for over a year. We just shot the whole campaign for it with this strobe, and I think the photos look really cool. So I'm very excited to share those as well over the next week. If you want to keep up with Long Weekend and know what's going on with that, I'll put an Instagram in the description. as well as my Instagram and Montell's. Thank you so much for watching, and finally, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is an incredible all-in-one website building platform that you can use to build your photography portfolio online. I've been using Squarespace for over 3 years now, and they've made it so easy to get a website up and running with my photography. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can hit the link in my description for a 14-day free trial of Squarespace. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Willem for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week with another video. Peace.